Hello, 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 everybody. I want to give a shout out to all my lokes out there, to all my brother and sister veterans, and to everyone in general. I hope that you're having a wonderful day. I hope that you enjoyed the fights last night. Would like to give some brief comments on some of the fights, and that'll about do it. The first fight of the night I want to talk about was Hall versus Penn. Wasn't surprised by that outcome at all. Hall won via heel hook in the first round. And surprisingly, BJ looked pretty good in that fight up until he got grabbed. As soon as he got grabbed, Ryan locked that thing in, and BJ even rolled the wrong way, and it was a wrap. It just gets to the point with BJ Penn is we really don't want to see him in the octagon anymore. He has nothing left to prove. He's 40 years old. He's 13 years out of his prime, but in his prime in his day, he was one of the best to ever do it. But he fought everybody, even up to heavyweight. But with so many wars and with so much time in the sport, it just catches up to you. And BJ, please, we love you. We've seen enough, brother. You're one of the best of all time. You're a Hall of Famer. Every time you go out there and do this, people forget how great you really were and what you gave to the sport. And people need to remember that without BJ Penn, MMA wouldn't be where it is today. What I say about Ryan Hall is that guy had leg lock game is on point. He has the ability to really, I think, wrap anybody up with that thing. If he meets a really good striker, he's in a lot of trouble. But he can get on those legs. I believe even he can get on those legs with Ferguson or Khabib or any of them. So he's a dangerous fight for anybody. But he fights so rarely, and I don't see him moving up the rankings anytime soon because he's really not going to get a push because of his style of fighting. It's not super exciting, and he's really not an active fighter. But again, he is incredibly good at what he does, and have to give him some respect for that. The next fight of the night, Silva de Andrade versus Yan. That fight actually was stopped in the corner. Silva de Andrade was cut pretty badly here, but he was on the bottom, taking a severe beating for the round before, and I think this was a good call here. We saw this we saw this recently in the Barbosa fight where the guy that he was fighting just took punishment. Dan Hooker took so much punishment in that fight and just shot after shot, and that fight could have been called a round earlier. And I think that when these corners call the fight for these fighters, they're looking out for their fighters. We see this in boxing, but if your guy is beat, let's save him to fight another day. I mean, this is a sport where the consequences are super high, and one fight like that could end someone's career. We want to see these guys come back and compete. They're trying to feed their families. This is a career for them. We don't want to see anybody hurt permanently or hurt before their time is up. So I think good job by that corner. The next fight talk about is Zingano versus Megan Anderson. This was a weird fight. Um, Coming out, the fight started a little slow. Megan was a little slow on the trigger. Kat was actually throwing some good leg kicks and looking pretty decent, but Megan was putting the pressure on some, and you could tell the Cat was looking for that takedown, but we really didn't get to see the fight. Megan uh, threw some strikes, came up with a high kick to the face, and her toe went straight into Kat Zingano's eye. At that time, Kat kind of turned away, ran to the cage, kind of grabbed her eye, and Megan pretty much stopped at that point. But the referee verbally told Megan, "Come on, keep fighting, keep going." And Kat had her back to her, and Megan threw a couple strikes there, and then they finally stopped it. I think this was a case of bad refereeing. That referee should have realized something was off. But it comes in a gray area because, of course, a hand poke to the eyes, that's illegal. But a toe to the eye, this isn't something we see every day. I can't think of another fight that I've actually seen it in, and it's like a gray area. It's according to the rules a legal strike. It's not illegal. But in all actuality, I think this should have been ruled an accidental foul, a no contest, and not necessarily a win for Anderson. But again, it comes in a gray area. Anderson gets the victory. And I think it's a bad look for Megan. One, she seemed a little too happy to me with this victory. winning in the way she was. She was talking about her game planning and her coaches, and I think and I'm a huge Megan Anderson fan, but I think she should have been a little more humble with this situation because she won kind of on a technicality. It wasn't a great performance for her, and she really needed a great performance. She looked really bad on the ground in her last fight versus Holly Holm, and with her and Cyborg really only being the 140, only two true 145-pound fighters in the UFC, she needed to have a compelling performance to get herself up to a title shot. Because as of now, Cyborg being beat, we'll talk about this a little bit later, and Nunes having the title, where does that leave Anderson? Who does that leave as an opponent for her? Where does that leave her as far as her quest for a title and being marketable? It kind of puts her in a no man's land of nowhere. Um, I could unfortunately very well see this 145-pound division being cut and Anderson being let go. And she's a tremendous young talent. She just needs some time to develop, and probably should have stayed in Victor for a while longer and developed her skills some more, and before she went to a bigger promotion. I would even dare to say that maybe Bellator would have been a better fit for Megan. They have a much bigger 145-pound roster, and they have some decent fighters such as Julia Budd, which I'd like that'd be a good fight for Megan Anderson. But we'll see what comes from this. The last fight on the prelims was Arlovsky versus Harris, and this just wasn't a great fight. Arlovsky looked pretty good in the first round. Walt Harris really couldn't ever get anything going, but he kept the pressure going. He kept throwing strikes. He kept pushing forward. He kept trying, while Arlovsky seemed to just not put in a whole lot of effort to just try to counter. Through very few strikes and very little offenses, was on the back foot, so Harris got the decision. Um, I could have seen it either way. I think that's okay because he was the more active fighter. If Arlovsky would have actually put some pressure, threw a lot more strikes instead of just throwing onesies and twosies here, he could have won that fight. It was very within his ability to win that fight, and it was his lack of activity and his lack of fighting really that lost him that fight. Going to the main card, Chad Mendes versus Volkanovski. This was a barn burner. What a great fight. Both guys came out looking good, firing shots, and it was a back and forth war. Chad got to a point where he uh, started throwing his hands well, ripping to the body, going up high. Probably should have went to the body a little bit more, but he caught Volkanovski with a shot and dropped him. And it looked like that was the beginning of the end for Volkanovski, but in that firefight, Volkanovski started throwing back and caught Mendes hard. And at that point, Mendes really, in trying to finish it there, and with some of the takedowns, he had some great takedowns, well timed, got Volkanovski on the mat, but he would pop right back up. He had a lot better wrestling than I thought it would. He got right back to his feet, and he was right back in the battle. And Chad, he really blew his energy in that big exchange in between the takedowns, and I dare to say he was gassed. He gassed pretty quickly, and at that point Volkanovski still was ready to go, and he wasn't backing down. And he continued with pressure, and he kept throwing great shots. Stayed in his face, mixed it up, had Chat hurt, had Chat running, and eventually found the right shot and finished the fight. Uh, Exceptional performance, a great fight. I think that we can see Volkanovski moving up the ranks. He's still a young guy. It'd be nice to see him face a few more opponents, but we may see him challenging for a title here within the next couple of years. He's a tremendous talent to keep an eye on. The next fight, Latifi versus Corey Anderson. This was not exactly what I thought it was going to turn out to be, but uh, round one was. Latifi came out throwing some big shots. He landed some big shots, and surprisingly, Corey ate him. He ate him well and walked right through him. I thought some of those shots were going to stop him, but they didn't. He held up his chin, and to be honest, after the first round, Latifi throwing all those hard shots. From there, it was pretty much all Corey Anderson. Latifi was on his back foot trying to counter here and there, but was extremely gassed. And Corey just kept pushing forward, keeping the pressure, uh, keeping his jab in his face, throwing a kick here and there, and just kept the pressure on. It wasn't anything dynamic from Corey Anderson, but Corey Anderson did indeed looked good enough to pull off a decision in that fight. The thing that I go from here, though, is Corey wins this fight, but where does he really go from here? Corey is decent in all areas. He's pretty well rounded, but he's not exceptional in any one area. Um, he's not really a fight stopper. He doesn't have excellent submissions. He doesn't have the power in his hands or kicks to really stop a fight. He really won that fight off of his cardio. I can see him doing this to other fighters, pushing the pace, increasing his striking ability a little bit better. His wrestling is very good. He can put guys down. He really didn't go to his wrestling in this fight, um, but he has those tools. But he doesn't. He really needs to get some tools in his arsenal to stop these fights. He needs to. I don't think we'll ever see Corey Anderson putting people out on the feet, but at least work on a submission game. Maybe he can get this thing to the ground and win some by submission. But besides that, Corey Anderson can push a pace and he can win and he can push and he can grind and get decisions. But it's not the most exciting style of fighting. Yet he's still a young talent. He's progressing. Let's see what he does in the next couple of years. Our next fight, Carlos Condit versus Michael Chiesa. This fight went down pretty much how I thought it was going to go down. Um, I was hoping. I'm a huge Carlos Condit fan, and I love the natural born killer. But as we've seen for Carlos Condit through the years, he has a big deficiency in the wrestling. His jiu-jitsu was okay off his back, but when he gets put on the ground by a superior wrestler, he has problems, and he always has, and it's not really a hole that he's closed off. Carlos was definitely the better striker, but he never had an opportunity to get his strikes off. Michael Chiesa actually landed some strikes of his own and was in on the clinch really quick, and he stayed there. He got in on Carlos very easily. Carlos couldn't keep a distance from him and couldn't keep him off him. And once Chiesa had him on the ground, he pretty much dominated there. In the beginning, Carlos had some good transitions. He almost had that arm bar, which was real close. Which if he would have pulled that off, we'd be saying something different. But he just missed that, but used it for reversal to get back up. And then, bam, the wrestling. He was right back down on his butt, and just so many of those. And Carlos was kind of broke. He got caught in the Kimura. It turned to some kind of weird straight arm lock, but Chiesa decent on the ground, and he gets the win. The guy looked massive at 170 pounds. I was surprised. He looked bigger than Carlos. Wondering how he ever got to 155. So Chiesa, not one of my favorite fighters, but let's see how he does at 170 pounds. He called out Neil Magny. I think that's a great fight. Two guys that have decent stand-up skills or average, and Magny has a wrestling advantage, and Chiesa probably has the submission advantage. But let's see. I think that'll be a good contest, and that'll be a good indicator of where Michael Chiesa is at in the 170-pound division. Co-main event of the night: Chris Cyborg versus Amanda Nunes. What a fight! Fantastic fight for as long as it lasted. During the weigh-ins and stuff, I have to say I didn't give Nunes a lot of chance. I thought if Nunes could technical strike, stay on the outside, use her speed, use some leg kicks, stay out of the clinch and stay off the cage with Cyborg, that she had a chance. I never saw the outcome coming. Nunes won by first round KO and vicious, brutal KO. Chris came out and Nunes came out slinging. Chris came straight at her, aggressive. It was a little too aggressive. That aggressiveness caught her because Nunes wasn't scared. Like we see most fighters with Cyborg, as soon as they feel her power or feel her pressure, they seem to wither. And Nunes didn't at all. She stood right up to the test, stayed right in the pocket, and as Cyborg was firing and landing some decent shots, Nunes stayed in the pocket and fired him right back. And what Nunes, we found out, is quicker to the mark. Cyborg was swinging wide and open, but to be honest, so was Nunes, but she was quicker to the mark. She got there first, and her punches, they carry a pack. She hits like a truck, and she hit Cyborg with punch after punch, and with shot after shot, and after she hurt Cyborg, she was dishonored. She never let up, and Cyborg must have taken, I don't know, 6 or 7 good shots. I mean, they were right on the money, cracking, turning her head side to side, dropping her time and time again until finally Nunes came over the top with the right hand, and boom, Chris Cyborg does a face plant. Exceptional performance from Amanda Nunes, now the first female champ in the UFC, and really in contention for being the greatest women's mixed martial artist of all time. Let's look at who she's beaten. She's beaten Chris Cyborg, Misha Tate, Ronda Rousey, Jermaine Durandamy, Valentina Shevchenko, Sarah McMahon. The only person we've really seen her lose to is Kat Zingano, and that was really early in her career, and I believe it was actually that loss that got Nunes to up her game. So if you look at her resume, she's knocked off some of the greatest and women's mixed martial artists of all time. I definitely put her up in there at the top of the conversation, and she just secured her spot in the UFC Hall of Fame. So congratulations to Nunes. Curious as to who we'll see next. I really don't know who her fight will be at 135. The division's kind of been cleared out. And at 145, I could easily see the rematch with Cyborg. Or who else could she fight? She could possibly fight Megan Anderson, but I don't believe that Megan Anderson is ready for Nunes or Cyborg. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens with that. But I would like to definitely see if Nunes can hold on to both those belts and they can actually build the 145-pound division. I've seen some decent fighters. The Ultimate Season fighter season has some decent 145-pound fighters. And, there's talent out there. There's a lot of talent in Bellator and Invicta that they can make some fights, and they can progress this weight class. It's just up for them to make the push. So we'll see where they go from here. But again, congratulations to the champ, Amanda Nunes. Let's look at the main event of this card of UFC 232, John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson. It was clouded definitely with controversy for all the PED positive tests from John Jones. I've had a lot of arguments with people about this. I do believe that John Jones is guilty and that he is a dirty fighter. I've spent hours and hours in researching this, and actually have found no one that says John Jones is actually innocent except for 2 people, Jeff Nowitzki and Dana White. Even USADA's comments officially are that he popped for steroids. They didn't actually say that. I haven't found any place where they actually clear John Jones. Jeff Nowitzki and Dana White have said that USADA cleared John Jones. It's different than having an official statement from an expert. There's no expert out there I could find to clear John Jones. So I do believe he came into this fight dirty. That said, though, that's not what won him the fight. To be honest, this fight was kind of very disappointing. I thought it was one of the worst fights of the card. Both guys looked like they had a lot of ring rust. They came out slow. It was a very slow, not a lot of action in that fight. John was on the back foot, and Gus really looked out of sorts. He looked flat from the moment he walked in. He wasn't throwing anything but a pity-pat jab and a wide left hook. On the other hand, John Jones's fight IQ, despite the PEDs, his fight IQ is what won him this fight. He, unlike Gustafsson, he made some changes coming in. He made some adjustments. One of the big adjustments he made was when they were in the clinch last fight, Gustafsson was getting off with a lot of inside shots and dirty boxes and shots on the break, and Jones did a great job of tying him up. And Gustafsson he shut Gustafsson's game down here. Gustafsson really didn't have any tools with which to threaten. Like I said, he was throwing some wide left hooks. He hit with the occasional jab, threw no kicks. He didn't threaten with the takedown like he did in the first. So John really didn't have much to look out for, but just some straight hands. And even Gus's movement didn't look great. I don't know if he came into this fight 100%, but it definitely was one of his not better performances. That said, it was one of John Jones's worst performances, too. He didn't look great in this fight at all. Was not really throwing much, but he threw some nice oblique kicks. He kept them off. He kept the distance. He kept them at range. Like I said, he shut down Gustafsson's offense. and he threw some good leg kicks, and one hurt Gus pretty bad, and I think that changed the the pace of the fight. After that, John had been trying for takedowns and had been getting stopped by Gus, but finally John got in on a greatly timed takedown, got it to the ground, and from the time it was on the ground, it was a wrap. He dominated the wrestling here and dominated Gustaf's on the ground. Alex didn't look like he had anything for John there, and John uh, he passed the side control pretty easily. He laid some shots down, and he quickly got on his back. Now, the one thing I will say about the end of this fight, though, that a lot of people didn't see or aren't commenting on, is that John threw some dirty shots. He hit Gustafsson in the back of the head a couple times, and that's what ended the fight. But but even though those shots were fouls and illegal, John would have still won this fight. He was pretty much in control from the moment he stepped out there, and was the superior fighter. And he was the he had the better IQ of both the fighters in there, and he showed it. He fought smart. He got the victory, but not one of John Jones' best performances. I didn't like all the religious stuff at the end there. As I don't really buy it with John. John, we've seen your life. We're not buying all the religious stuff, all the God stuff. You can leave that at home and just come out and be who you are. Just embrace being the heel. We'd rather you just be the heel and be honest and be a dirty guy that fights well, because he is an exceptional talent. But we'll see in the future here. If he comes out flat in some of the next performances, he may very well be look to get beat. At heavyweight, I don't know how John fares. I don't know how John fares versus Stipe or versus DC at heavyweight. He might be exceptional there. We'll just have to see, but that's a possibility in the future. I would just like to see John Jones clean his act up, stay away from the PEDs and all that. He doesn't need them. PEDs, whether that gave him an advantage last night or not, it's not what won him the fight. It's not at all won him the fight. It was his fight IQ and the adjustments he made. But still, I don't like dirty fighters and this whole appearance that the UFC is cleaning up the sport, and when in fact they're not. If you're going to let guys juice, like him and Lesnar, just let them all juice. Then it'll be a level playing field. Then I don't have any problem with it. But I don't see it's okay to let some people do things they're not supposed to, and other people you know, get busted for the same thing and get hard consequences. It's not fair. It's a bad look for the UFC, and it puts a bad taste in the mouth of uh, MMA fans, at least the hardcore ones. The casuals don't seem to care. The fact that I'm commenting on a PED, somebody's going to make a comment on this video about something mean or ugly, but I'm down. I'm used to that anyway. Um, but the truth is the truth. But John Jones still is an exceptional talent. Um, but I'd like it. I'd like to see a different chapter turn in his life, and him put in some actual good performances where they're not in doubt or there's not shade on him. Because right now, John Jones' whole career, it's up for debate. And that's not what we really want to see from one of the greatest martial artists to ever do it. So, anyway, if you have any feelings, opinions, or comments, please leave them. Look forward to reading them, and y'all have a great day, and God bless you. Bye-bye.